We've been listening to even more evidence from Bob Lambert. A great deal of what he's been talking about this afternoon has been subject to a reporting restriction order, which is a shame in as much as I think this is one of the areas where Barr has skewered him really more than in previous stuff, just because the internal logic of his own reports, regardless of what he's saying today, which as we know he says very little, has completely unravelled, and the levels of speculation within the reports are off the scale, should we say. Yeah. I'm joined by Kate Wilson of Police Spies Out of Lives. What did you make of this afternoon?
Well, I've only been here 10 minutes,
okay.
So I saw the morning.
I've
only been here 10 minutes, but it was quite an enjoyable 10 minutes. I had a sense that Lambert was flapping around like a fish out of water. In the 10 minutes that I was there, he was like, oh, well, I don't think that's my report. I think that must be John Dines' report. And Mitting just stepped in and said, look, we've got all the reports, we've studied the reports. There's no indication that Dines was reporting on any of these people. You were reporting on these people. Would you like to revise your answer about this? And then he kind of said, well, you know, maybe it was me, and if it was, I'm sure it was absolutely accurate at the time, but I have no recollection of why. And quite frankly, you know, the stuff that he's reporting is covered by a restriction order, but bollocks, you don't remember reporting this.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Incredibly inflammatory stuff.
Incredibly inflammatory.
Like off the scale.
Yeah.
Mitting is obviously angry about it.
Yep.
There's a whole, you know, all the kind of miscarriage of justice, legal professional privilege, like, you know, serious issues, serious crimes, like it's all in there, and there's no way he doesn't remember this stuff. Unless he just made it up and didn't think it was any kind of big deal. I mean, that's the interesting thing, is if it is, as Barr quite eloquently said, it was like, so by this stage, are you simply exaggerating, reporting speculation as fact and making things up? Then, you know, that's the level to which the questioning has got to. And Lambert's just like,
I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't recall. If it's my reporting, I'm sure it was correct at the time, and I'm sure I had my reasons for believing that at the time. I mean, it's just, it's pathetic, really, at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, it really is pathetic. I mean, you can't really, like, as you say, I mean, it's so, there's no, anybody would remember everything about that.
Yeah.
The idea you wouldn't, it's just laughable, really.
Yeah.
It's a farce, a real farce. But I mean, it's kind of what we've come to expect from Lambert, and he's just doubling down and sticking to his, you know.
Well, he's very clearly saying, I mean, you can see it. He's clearly come in, and with the idea that, okay, where I'm presented with a report, I will stand by what it says. I may not remember anything about it, but I will stand by it because all of my reporting was reported with absolute integrity at the time. And then when there isn't a report, he often repeats the phrase, well, if I was shown a report from the time, I could tell you that it was mine and that it was correct, but if there's no report, there's nothing that I can add. So it's like, basically, you can kind of see his strategy is, I'm going to go in, I'm going to say that the reporting that is mine is all correct, I can't remember anything else, I have nothing to add, everything I have to say is in my reports. And this is the police line, really. I mean, there's when Mark Kennedy was first outed, like, the first thing that he said to the people who challenged him was, you need to tell me what you know. And they were like, no, you need to tell us the truth. And he's like, no, you don't understand, you need to tell me what you know. And, like, the approach that the police took, and it's the approach that they took in my case as well, was, if we think you already know it, we'll admit it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And that is the approach that Lambert is taking. He's if you've got a report that I wrote that says it, then I will talk to it. If not, I know nothing. I have nothing to add. I don't even know why you're asking me this question. Show me the report or leave me alone. So yeah, it is. He's like, if you tell me what you already know, then I will. I mean, he won't even admit to it. He'll just say, I can't remember. But he does have this phrase of, you know, I can accept, I can't remember what the phrase is, but kind of, you know, I don't recall that at all, but I can accept that it might have happened.
Yeah. And what he also likes to do is a lot of speculative language. Like, I would imagine that I was, I'm sure that I was.
Yeah.
It could be that I was.
So it's quite interesting then when you get to some things like, in this morning there was a report that where somebody said, you know, he brought a bunch of ALF activists around to my house and had a meeting, and I was really unhappy about that. And suddenly Lambert is like, I am absolutely certain this didn't happen, and I'm going to give you this long, convoluted rant about walking distances between places in order to prove my absolute certainty. And it's just like, dude, you don't remember anything from this, like no specifics at all. How can you possibly say that this didn't happen?
We did get that earlier actually. You probably missed it, where he described the raid that took place on his bedsit.
Oh, I did miss that. What happened?
I mean, essentially, he made a big preamble about how this was something that he had the clearest memory, both visually and orally, of everything that happened during that. And then he proceeded to tell us about like how many flights of stairs they came up. You know, what was on the bedside table, incredibly banal, like, details that didn't matter. I mean, the upshot of it was that a uniformed police officer who he knew picked up a photograph of him and Belinda together and looked at him with like an "oh, I, you've got a girlfriend" moment, which was the only thing of interest, but he managed to spin that out into a very long period because he was like, I remember all this, and then it's like, they kicked the door down, they came up the first flight of stairs, they came up the second flight of stairs. I mean, it was just, you know, this... when he knows something, he's very sure, but he dresses everything up. You know, if a picture could paint 1,000 words, he's using every one of them to describe it.
Yes.
You know.
I mean, and this is one of the things, is we've not heard all the Lambert evidence. We've not heard close to all the Lambert evidence.
Not
and we are now in discussions with the inquiry about how are you going to deal with this, because you know he's spun it out. He's got half a day left tomorrow. It's not long enough.
No,
everyone knows it's not long enough. He's going to have to come back. And when? So our 3 days next Monday and Tuesday are beginning to look like more days listening to Bob Lambert.
It seems likely. I mean, just to give people an idea, I mean, things that have been done in a linear fashion were on November 1987. Lambert fully withdraws in the January of 89, February of 89. So there's over a year still to go of his deployment. That includes his, you know, the way in which he withdrew from his relationship with Belinda, which has got a lot of detail to it, as well as plenty of other things.
And I can imagine as well that there's going to be quite a few further questions to be put to Lambert at the end of this. It's not like he's given satisfactory answers to the questions that he's been asked, and there have been quite a few times when people have sort of felt that, you know, Barr asked a series of questions, Lambert gave a series of non-answers, and then there was like a final question or a few final questions that needed to be put to him in order to really expose his non-answers that weren't. And I'm imagining that a few of those are going to be put to him at the end as well.
Yeah.
I believe he is going to be cross-examined by some of our lawyers, because there's serious matters of fact. I don't know whether that's going to happen, but I think it's certainly something that we're going to be asking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, you know, where, you know, there are instances here, quite a few, where our witnesses have very clearly said things, and Lambert has said that they're lying. So I think their legal representatives ought to have the right to put questions to him. We'll see what happens there.
Absolutely. You know, he's called a number of people a liar. He called Jackie a liar today, essentially, which went further than his previous statements about her, which I thought was a bit of a change. But we'll see. We better go back in. It's only a short break. Cheers for joining us. See you all in a bit.